Gomes looking for the overlap. Alba inside. It's Messi! Oh!
Again! The medicine man arrives and sinks his flaming spear into the hearts of Real Madrid. Astonishing from Messi. Beautiful counter-attack. All the pieces falling into place. Messi, born in the crossfire hurricane, and he is jumping Jack Flash right here.
Hi guys, welcome back to the fourth episode of the Football Talent Show. I'm here, as always, with Jacek Kulig for another special episode.
Hi Adam, it's great to be here again. Another exciting episode in front of us. We will talk about probably one of the most exciting clubs in world football and surely one of the best academies.
Yeah, we're doing the Football Talent Show, and it felt like we could only wait so long before touching on La Masia and FC Barcelona. They're the team to talk about, I think, when we're talking about talent development and talent production, not just in the past with the likes of Lionel Messi and Pedro, Puyol, Piqué, and so many other players who have come through that pipeline, but also in the present when we look at Lamine Yamal, Pau Cubarsi, and so many other young gems who we'll touch on in this episode.
Yes, so many exciting topics. We only have like 2 hours, so we need to be careful because, about Barcelona and especially La Masia, we could talk for like a few days. So let's not lose time and let's get into it.
And joining us for this one is, of course, another special guest. This time around, we've got Arsen. He's a Barcelona journalist and a real enthusiast from Lithuania, actually. So, Arsen, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Arsen, many will, of course, know you from Twitter, but why don't you also give the viewers a little bit more insight into your background as a football scout and also Barca journalist, and what got you into Barca in the first place as someone from Lithuania?
Well, my first experience with Barcelona was when I was like 5. It was like the Ronaldinho age, and it's first time when I saw on TV. I was amazed by Barcelona football, and I then absolutely fell in football myself. Started playing myself in the youth academies in Lithuania. Before I had to dropping out due to knee injuries as well. And then kind of fell off the football for a few years. And then I picked it up when I was 16. Started following Barcelona much more, like keeping up with every game. Also keeping tabs with the academy, La Masia. And then during the pandemic, I started writing about it on Twitter. Then I was picked up as a Barca Buzz admin for La Masia, writer there. Also started making videos on the players. So it's basically that.
And obviously, I mean, we're here to speak about La Masia. How different is La Masia then from a Lithuanian youth academy, which you grew up in? I think if you want to compare two different worlds, I can't think of two bigger contrasts than La Masia and Lithuanian youth football.
Yeah, it's a completely different world, to be honest. In Lithuania, the tactical side of things was like not that developed in Lithuania. We just played with the ball just to play with it. Sometimes not going too deep into positions. It was not that in depth compared to other academies in other countries like Spain or somewhere else.
Let's not forget that Lithuania is one of the very few countries in Europe where football is not the sport number one. I know like Baltic and Lithuanian football very well, and the level very, very far from high European standards, and you just can't compare any Lithuanian academy to La Masia, sadly.
And we always asked our guest what their first football memory was. You mentioned Ronaldinho there briefly. Was he the player that then got you really into football, really established that love for Barca also? Or was there a different memory that brought you into football originally?
No, it was definitely Ronaldinho because at the time he was the main player, entertaining everyone fans. rivals even. So yeah, that was my first memory of even seeing football for the first time. It was Barcelona, specifically Ronaldinho. So yeah.
It almost feels like when your first football memory is Ronaldinho, it can only go downhill from there because I think it doesn't get more exciting than Dino kind of working his magic in midfield and attack. Jacek, what's your relationship with Ronaldinho? You've obviously seen a lot more of him than I have.
Yeah, I'm slightly older than you guys, so my first experience was not Ronaldinho, but Ronaldo, Fenomeno. But I remember Ronaldinho being at the Olympics, I think, and he was Ronaldo then. He wasn't named Ronaldinho. He became Ronaldinho slightly later. So yeah, he was an insane talent. I remember when I was surprised when he moved to PSG, and it wasn't the PSG of today, so an extremely rich club. So I was very surprised that he went there. But yeah, what a player! Well, his prime, let's say, it wasn't very long, right? So his prime was like 2, 3 years. But yeah, it's better to have a prime 2, 3 years like Ronaldinho than 15 years of decent football career.
Yeah, Jacek, absolutely. I almost think back to the episode we did with Felix a few weeks ago with Chelsea, where we spoke about Hazard, where it's almost the same kind of parallels to Ronaldinho as this player who had this really stellar peak. But if you had tried to sustain that for a longer period, you would have almost taken the magic out of his game.
And for me, the icon, well, maybe he's not considered a huge legend of Barcelona, but when I started watching Barca many years ago, I really liked Patrick Kluivert. Patrick Kluivert, he was an important member of this Ajax team from '96 that made me also fell in love with young players, and I was so surprised to see a team like Ajax with so many youngsters. And yeah, I remember Kluivert and then Saviola, of course, the probably the biggest wonder kid at this time, Javier Saviola. But he also, like, first season he was really good at Barca, but he never really reached his full potential. And yeah, this duo Kluivert Saviola from the beginning of the 21st century was a thing that I remember very well these days.
Yeah, I think we could talk all day about the remarkable talents who have come through Barca in the past. But we have so much ground to cover just purely on La Masia in this episode, so I want to steer us in that direction. La Masia is, of course, the famed youth academy in Barcelona. I would argue the most famous academy in world football. They've produced so many talents that we'll get onto in this episode and so many still to come. And Arsen, when we speak about La Masia, what is it that you really think they do different than other academies in world football? What is the secret behind their success that they're able to produce just an outrageous amount of talent for the highest level?
The thing that stands out with La Masia is its mythology. Since Johan Cruyff took over in Barcelona, he specified like the academy should be priority, and from then everything changed there. You don't look at the physicality, but more about the technique. The players are developed to play for the first team rather than like for other academies that they make professional footballers rather than those who specialize for the first team to play with possession, to play with technique, understanding football, with the intelligence and so on. I think that was the what makes it more successful for Barcelona's first team, because sometimes you see those La Masia graduates go abroad and not reach the potential they were expected to achieve during the academy levels and so on. But sometimes you also have successes like Grimaldo, who also now exploding in Bundesliga, and many other examples as well.
Yeah, I think this DNA is extremely important because every time a player comes out from the academy of Barcelona, they play always the same system, right? And when they break out to the first team, there's always the same system as they played at the academy level. It doesn't happen in other clubs. Let's take an example of Real Madrid. You can have Mourinho, you have Ancelotti, so different approaches, and the players need to adapt. In Barcelona, they don't need to adapt. They know what they have to play. They just need to adapt to the level, intensity. But this is also a problem, in my opinion, for players who do not make it to the first team. Of course, they need to leave Barcelona and they go to a teams like, let's say, I don't know, Getafe, and it's a completely different football, completely different style, completely different life. So it's very often complicated for guys that, for example, Alex Collado. He was a really good player. He doesn't do really well because he struggles. He struggled a lot to adapt to another system. But yeah, so it's genius, but it can be problematic as well.
Yeah, for me, I think the focus of Barca and the academy, what makes them so distinct is that you really don't see them at all develop for the purpose of selling in the academy. They really develop for the purpose of integrating into the first team. And those who don't integrate into the first team will then obviously move elsewhere, but they're not necessarily seeking out players who then in 2, 3 years maybe have the physical body type and those qualities for the Premier League. They're purely looking for the Barca DNA players. I think that's something where it's very, very unique, something that has been going on for centuries. And like Jacek said, where as in other countries, the academy really needs to adapt itself to the standards of the first team. I would argue in Barca, it's even the first team that needs to adapt to the academy. I mean, you look at coaching hires in the past, they've always been kind of in the DNA of integrating youth players, bringing youth players forward, playing a football that's transitory to the qualities in Barca's academy. And you really see that also highlighted this season where Hansi Flick integrated so many countless young talents who we'll get onto in just a minute. But Arsen, I mean, is that really a factor where you say Barca needs to develop to be able to kind of sell more academy players for higher sums that don't necessarily make the grade? Or do you say that's something that really comes with the perils of this system of really bringing through players that are pure Barca talents and is not something you really want to give up to just get mere profits in the transfer market?
Well, I think you can achieve both, to be honest. Still developing the talent for the first team, but also develop them and then selling them for profit, like even having like a percentage of future sale or having some kind of rights to them, like as Real Madrid does very well, to be honest. Because I believe that the potential is there for the players, but of course, development and adapting to another style of play can be difficult for them. And that is why I believe, for example, a good loans from Juvenil A to third division to another clubs will be kind of beneficial because we saw Fermin Lopez, for example, benefit a lot from it. Then he came back from the loan, had a good season at Lenges, and then impressed Xavi and stayed in the first team, and now he's doing very well. Also, there's like Arno Comas, who did well on loan, came back to Barcelona B, did well, but wasn't able to make the first team impression and went to Basel. So if they can develop something like that loan scheme that could benefit both the player, both the club, would be perfect.
Yeah, and I think what Barcelona does, I said it's problematic, like for these players that do not make it to the first team, but by definition, academy needs to produce players for the first team, and this is what Barcelona does. Then you have these examples of Alex Collado who didn't make it and he struggles, but yeah, I think it's the right way. I see nothing wrong with like selling academy players for good money like Real Madrid, but your main thing you need to focus on is to produce players for the first team. And Barcelona does it like they're the best in that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we've spoken in private many times about this. I think one of my biggest qualms with German football at the moment, specifically with Borussia Dortmund, is the fact that you have such a high caliber youth development. You have kind of a constant team who's competing for U19 Bundesliga titles, U17 Bundesliga titles, but you're never finding ways to integrate these players into the first team. I mean, you looked at it, especially this season again, bringing a guy like Tom Rota out on loan, Koulibaly as well, who just had another excellent performance in the Champions League midweek. And when you're in kind of moments like for Barca the past few years, or now for Dortmund as well, where you are under pressure because you're not achieving targets in league and you're not having a manager who can really have that success of a Klopp or a Tuchel in the past, then these young players from the academy can be kind of that shining light for fans to kind of embrace the club in these difficult times and really find meaning in these failed moments. That's something we see a lot of clubs around the world not necessarily get right. And I think that's something that Barca, be it through their own decision making or just from the talent in the academy, have consistently found a good balance to give kind of meaning beyond just the results week to week.
They have the same problem with Atletico. So in Atletico, Cholo Simeone rarely uses academy players. So yeah, there was Hoken, then we have Pablo Barrios. So every 10 years, basically, an academy player. It needs to be more because the Academy of Atletico, of course, it's not of the same quality. as La Masia, but there are still plenty of good talents. And like for me, academy players are part of identity, and they're so important for fans. I have many Turkish friends, and they say they don't really care about the academy. They just want quality on the pitch. But every time there is a great academy player like Arda Güler or Semih Kılıçsoy, they're so proud of them. They're much more proud than for a mercenary player who came at the age of 31 from the Premier League. So it's really important. And yeah, being a La Masia fan, La Masia enjoyer like Arsen, it needs to be a great thing. It makes your life much better.
Another key factor that I think of when I think of La Masia is also Barca Athletic. So it's the second team. Right now they're playing in the third division. Narrowly missed out on promotion to the second division last summer. It's a really, really interesting model that I think Barca uses effectively. For example, in Germany, we also have clubs in the third tier from U23 outfits, but a lot of the times it is these older players between the ages of 22 and 23 who play there, who clubs are looking to kind of sell on for a bit of profit. Versus in Barcelona, it's really the teenagers who are jumping above their nominal youth academy age groups to get experience against older senior players.
Yeah, the point of the subsidiary Barca Athletic is to develop players to play at that semi-professional level. And with every year, the squad becomes younger and younger, to be honest. Last year, we had Marc Bernal making a jump from Cadet A, which is under 16 team, straight to Barca Athletic, which I don't remember happening ever, to be honest. So that was a very rare case. And now we also have a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds in the defense, midfield, even forwards as well. So it looks like Barca Athletic keeps like putting pressure on those youngsters to be able to adapt, playing against older players, against professional, semi-professional players. And now they're a bit struggling. I think they have now 6 draws in the last 6 games. But the main point of the Barca Athletic is to develop players. Of course, fans would like to see that promotion to second division, but of course, that will come with a cost because if you get promoted to second division, you need to sign more players, preferably older, with experience, in order to stay in that division. So it's a big question whether you will like it or not. For me, third division is fine because the priority is developing players.
I'm a big fan of these reserve teams that make it to the second division in Spain, but let's be honest, most of the time they struggle a lot. I think the last one was Real Sociedad under Xabi Alonso, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, they got relegated. So, and about Barca Athletic, I think that in every other club in the world, what Barca Athletic is, in the other club it would be called under 19 team. So that's really amazing, and that's really important because I always say that, for example, one game in senior football means more than 10 games at the youth level. And I think that the faster you get to this higher level, it's better for you. So, for example, if you are 15 and you play for under 19s, it will be only beneficial for you because you play at a higher level, and you learn a lot more than playing with your peers.
Yeah, yes, I totally agree. I think that especially for me, it's almost beneficial that Barca plays in the third tier with the second team because then you also are more willing to integrate these really, really young talents. You're not necessarily worried about being in a constant relegation battle where you say, okay, we maybe bring in more 21, 22-year-olds who can really sustain us in this division, but you're really more willing and more freely bringing in these young teenagers who need that experience to grow into the first team product. I mean, even for a 17-year-old, the first team of Barcelona is not that far away. It's mainly not about kind of the technical attributes. It's about the physical adaptation and also the tactical adaptation to senior football. And that's where Barca Athletic, even in the third tier of Spanish football, brings you so much different qualities than playing U19 top tier football in Spain or even UEFA Youth League. There's just different things that are required to play in senior football. And so that's why I think it's so beneficial. I mean, obviously, there's still kind of your 21, 22-year-olds who can profit from this. We looked at Marc Casado, for example, who's probably been one of the biggest benefactors of Barca Athletic in recent years, but primarily is really this place for teenagers to take those steps where they can hopefully integrate within 6 months of Barca Athletic time to then play senior football for Barcelona in the Champions League and at the top of La Liga.
Yeah, Adam, as you said, Marc Casado is the prime example of Barca Athletic being an important piece in this whole Barcelona system. And I think we'll be able to see more these, let's say, late bloomers from Barcelona. So not only these wonder kids that flourish at 17, so Yamal, Cubarsi, and Bernal, but also slightly older players, just like Casado or Fermin, players that understand the system very well.
I just want to mention regarding Marc Casado because the amount of patience he had over the years. He has been called up with Xavi for like 30, 40 matches before making his La Liga debut. And there was like a lot of rumors about him leaving to Granada, and it actually was very close. But Marc Casado was very clear that his priority was Barcelona, and Marc Casado was very clear that Barcelona was his priority, reaching that first team, making an impact. Because since I saw him first during his Juvenil B, which is under 18, I was very amazed with him because he also made his Barca Athletic preseason debut, and I was amazed with the intelligence he had, with how he reads the game. He became one of my favorite talents in the academy because I actually like a lot those intelligent midfielders who understands the game, as in reading on the paper sheet. It was, for me, it was incredible. And since then, he has been developing greatly, even though he wasn't considered as a big talent, and now he's making headlines. His season has been incredible. And also we had another late bloomer, I would say, Pau Victor, who had he joined from Girona on loan. He had a great season, scoring like 20 goals, picking up like 6 assists, being instrumental for Barca Athletic and Rafa Marquez's squad in the battle for second division. Of course, they lost out in the final, but it's a good way to show that not only the young players can make it, but also those who are 21, 22, 23. Even though the fans usually say, oh, you're 23 and still playing in the third division, you have nothing to do in the first division. It's, for me, it's crazy. It's like crazy way of thinking.
Yeah, and I'm guilty as charged because before the season, I think I said somewhere that Marc Casado needs to leave Barcelona. He's already 21, so he starts to play at the highest level of Spanish football. So yeah, it would be wrong. It would be a mistake. And Arsen, I have a question. Do you think that Marc Casado would thrive in other La Liga sides? Let's say Marc Casado left to, let's say, Villarreal or Girona last summer. Do you think that he would be as good as he's at Barca right now?
I don't think so, to be honest, because Casado suits Barcelona's style of play quite a lot, and adapting to Granada, which he was heavily linked with, would be difficult because against Granada is not that team that plays with the possessions. But I believe Casado, he maybe would have like performances there and there, like Monchi had during his La Liga stage, but I wouldn't say he would be as impactful as another club compared to Barcelona.
I couldn't agree more, Arsen.
It's another great example of, like we said at the beginning of the show, this Barca DNA that's in the talents. It makes it harder to potentially adapt to foreign environments, but it makes them perfectly made for the first team. And before you then move on, I think the one thing I also want to mention is almost this Lamine Yamal curse. The 17-year-old who breaks through and within 12 months win the Euros and is the best player in world football. I think this has really kind of tarnished how a lot of people view talent development. They see it as this kind of linear line that can only go forward. And I think Marc Casado is an excellent example of how, talent development goes in varying leaps and bounds, specifically in different positions. These DMs often mature later, center backs mature later, strikers can play until they're 35 at the highest level. Just looked at the one lining up for Barcelona week for week. So it's really not about kind of how quickly they can jump on the scene, but where that eventual peak comes. Be patient with a lot of these players. Just because they're not Yamal right away doesn't mean that they can't eventually develop into something special.
Yeah, I definitely agree because as Barcelona fans have been spoiled having like almost every year a debut of a teenager like 16, 17, and for Barcelona fans it looks like as a norm, to be honest. And actually, it's not a norm in football because 10 years ago, this wasn't such a thing, having players at 16, 17 playing at top level and looking it easy. So I would say Barcelona fans have been spoiled with such thing and maybe spoil it across the Europe, to be honest. So, because even other fans expect players to be world class at 16, 17. But again, there should be patience with the youngsters. They need to adapt one way or another.
Yeah, I think many people say that the Messi and Ronaldo era changed football. And yeah, right now, like if you will ask a 16-year-old about a striker and you say, yeah, he scored 20 goals in 50 games, he says, what? Only 20 goals in 50 games? He should have scored 50 goals in 50 games. No, it's not normal. And people change the perception of this goal and assist. And I think Lamine Yamal just changed the perception of young players because in 2-3 years people will say, okay, he's 18 and he's not a star of a top Champions League team. No, what Lamine does, it's not normal, it's an anomaly, it's a phenomenon. So we should be more patient with players. And I think when I look at the social media, I think many people are too reactionary. So we need patience and we need to trust in people and in football players.
Yeah, I think the social media aspect plays a huge role. I think, Yasa, despite your big audience, you do a relatively good job of keeping it at least relatively analytical and objective. But you do see how kind of social media fuels the flame almost when it comes to hyping up talents when they just jump onto the scene, or also then disrespecting those who have a few bad games and then go out of the limelight.
Yeah, okay. I'm guilty of overhyping players a bit, but yeah, it's still social media. And even though I'm a late bloomer, I need to adapt to these new times.
Arsen, just to kind of round up our little La Masia introduction here, where do you think the academy ranks on a global scale then when we look at kind of how it compares to the other great academies around world football?
Ooh, tough question because I don't want to be biased. I could say number one, but to be honest, there's a lot of great academies that develop players. Even Real Madrid's academy can be seen as top level because they're still developing good talents, world class, that make it maybe not at Real Madrid but elsewhere. There's Lyon, even PSG, Ajax, Sporting, Benfica, and so on. But I would say maybe top three, definitely for me, I would say.
I think right now people are obsessed with, yeah, who's the best? You need to tell me number one. I'm not that guy, and I would say, yeah, it's an absolute elite academy. I think first thing to say is that there is no better academy than Barcelona. I'm not necessarily going to say, yeah, they are number one, but there is not a single academy in world football, even though you mentioned like Lyon, Sporting, Ajax, Dinamo Zagreb, Partizan Belgrade, like all these fantastic academies, but none of them is better than La Masia. And none of them does a better job to implement youth players into the first team.
Yeah, that final point that you just said there, yes, that was what I wanted to mention. For me, where Barca is the number one, it's about creating that pathway at an elite club into the first team. Because there's many clubs who create that pathway, but few who do it whilst also competing for La Liga, whilst trying to make it to the latter rounds of the Champions League, while basically trying to be one of these elite European clubs and still provide youth pathways into the first team. Very, very few clubs in world football are doing that to a better degree than Barca right now. And you could say, okay, maybe that's forced due to the kind of financial constraints on Barca at the moment. But I would still say, even at the peak where they were able to financially compete with every club in world football, they were still consistently finding ways to integrate young talent into the first team and not block those pathways with older players.
Yeah, only this season Barcelona gave minutes in the first team to 10 under 21 academy players. I think it's over 5,000 minutes for under 21. So I do not even count Iñaki Peña or Dani Olmo. So it's over 5,000 minutes for academy under 21 academy players. It's insane. Let's be honest. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. What's happening at Barca right now? If you see the quality on the pitch, the number of young players, the number of academy graduates, It's crazy. It's top level, and I don't think it ever happened before. Even during like Rijkaard and Guardiola times, there were not so many great academic graduates on the pitch. So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I would say the financial situation of the club can be considered a blessing in disguise for the academy because before that, Barcelona was spending a lot of money on other players that didn't have that success for the club. Since the financial situation, you had to rely on the academy. It became as a blessing for the fans, for the players, for the academy players as well. But what I noticed in recent months that even the academy players and their parents and their agents are already expecting a lot from the club, like asking them from projects that they will reach first team or second team. And I have been discussing with those agents and parents, and I keep explaining even to them that the situation of Lamine, Pedri, Gavi, Pau Cubarsi, even Balde, I would say, is not normal. And it should be a process with time and patience. So don't rush your kids expecting them to be first team player at 15, 16. See how it goes. If there's a better project, you can leave, maybe come back in the future for the first team. You never know how it's been with Dani Olmo.
I really like what you said about the lack of money was a blessing for Barcelona. I really like it. And I always say that too much money can be a curse in football. And think we see many examples of that. So, yeah, Barcelona was almost bankrupt, but look at where are they now. And it's almost mostly thanks to La Masia.
That rounds up a little bit of our first section about the history and background of La Masia and what makes it so special compared to other youth academies around the world. And now in our second section, we want to move into the first team graduates. So I've counted 12 players in the first team right now for Barca who have featured and gotten minutes at least from the academy. We have them listed here. We want to go through them one by one. Some of them are a little bit older, like as we mentioned, Iñaki Peña and Dani Olmo, but others are just starting their career, just taking the first steps into their Barcelona senior career. It'll be interesting to go through them now with you, Arsen, to get your thoughts. So we'll go from the back to the front, starting with Iñaki Peña in goal. Arsen, he's obviously playing right now for Marc-Andre ter Stegen, a long-term injury for ter Stegen, which is quite disappointing, especially for him, given that he's finally the number one for the German national team also. But is Peña for you a real long-term solution? Or is it just kind of a case of being there at the right moment, at the right time to capitalize on a disappointing injury for ter Stegen?
With Funake, it's a kind of interesting situation because it was always in the academy, Iñaki Peña and Arnaud Tenas, regarded as the big goalkeeper talents. Personally, I prefer Arnaud Tenas more, but Barcelona decided not to offer him a contract renewal and they let him leave for free, even though Arnaud Tenas was ready to renew, even live on loan, as he personally mentioned and confirmed that there were simply no talks, even though Juan Laporta said that they're gonna offer him a contract because of the social media outrage that was happening, and that was basically a lie. But with Iñaki Peña, I would say he's more like a short-term solution for Marc's injury. Marc-Andre ter Stegen is still here, still considerably young for a goalkeeper, let's say that. And personally, I do not believe that Barcelona will sign like a top-level goalkeeper to replace ter Stegen or as a substitute, even though I do not believe it. Even though there's like a few possibilities, for example, I like Las Palmas goalkeeper Alvaro, who would suit Hansi Flick a lot, to be honest, with high line. He comes off the line. He's very confident with the ball and off the ball. But Enrique Peña is a goalkeeper that needs confidence because with every passing minute that he gets confident, he gets better. But I see him as a short-term solution for now.
Fully agree on that. And 10 minutes before the episode, I told Adam I need to ask Arsen if he prefers Iñaki Peña or Arnaud Tenas, and I hope he will say Tenas. So I got my answer, the right answer, without even asking. So I fully agree on your Iñaki Peña take. With all due respect, because he does a really good job. Like he jumped in, so there is a lot of pressure, and he deserves a lot of respect for what he has done so far this season. But yeah, for me, he's not a long-term solution. I saw links with Lucas Chevalier from Lille. I think he would be a really good signing. In my opinion, either Diogo Costa or Lucas Chevalier would be a good choice. But yeah, as you said, Marc-Andre ter Stegen isn't dead. He's just injured. He'll be back, and he's a fantastic goalkeeper. I think he got criticized slightly too much in recent years. Okay, he made some errors. Every goalkeeper does it, but he's still an elite goalkeeper.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I come from the German media side with Marc-Andre ter Stegen, and there it's especially prominent. When you have a goalkeeper in a foreign league, you really only see either the incredible saves or the big mistakes. And for me, ter Stegen is a goalkeeper who does a lot of his game through almost not even sensing that he's there. Makes the consistent saves, always makes the right decisions on the ball, and you're almost happy when you don't realize that ter Stegen is playing. That obviously doesn't help for a foreign media that only picks up on the big moments. And in general, when I think about the goalkeeper position, like you said about Peña, he's someone who needs confidence. And I would argue there's no position on the field that needs confidence more than goalkeeper and striker. I think both positions need consistent game time and also faith from a manager to play at their very best. I think that Peña obviously hasn't had that in the past, coming in as kind of this secondary role for odd minutes here or there. And he's definitely improving now that he has a bit of an extended stretch in goal. But I agree that Barca need a more promising goalkeeper for the future if they want to compete at these high levels for the next decade or so. And I don't necessarily see Peña being that once ter Stegen decides to leave or retire. Moving on to a more promising future La Masia graduate, though, we have Hector Fort at right back. He's born in 2006, 18 years old, a really remarkable talent, one of these youngsters who has made the immediate leap into the Barcelona first team. So, Arsen, tell me a little bit about Hector Fort and his start to life in the Barcelona first team.
Yeah, with Hector Fort, it's a quite funny story to be honest, because my first memory of him is playing at center back. Because initially he started as a right back in his earlier youth, and then at under 15, under 16, he played mostly as center back, sometimes at right back, changing positions with Alexis Olmedo as well, who played at right back and center back. He kind of exploded, making a jump from under 16 straight to under 19, making his debut for Barca Athletic, also getting picked up for the first team preseasons, doing well out of position, which is also where he played at left back, which was kind of a big surprise for me. I didn't expect him to do at left back that well. And now it's kind of interesting situation with him because he's still very young, not picking up a lot of minutes, but that's mostly because of Kunde, who is doing a very good job at that position. And with Hector, I would say he might get some few minutes there and there to replace Kunde to give him rest. So it will be interesting to see how he develops further.
For me, Hector Fort reminds me of Arnau Martinez. So a right back that would fit perfectly into a three-man line as a right-sided center back. He's not Alejandro Balde, let's be honest. He's not an attacking fullback. He's rather an intelligent right back. So yeah, you can see at Barcelona right now, Jules Koundé, he's not an attacking fullback who will be making the runs all the time. So yeah, I rate him very high. Maybe not a top talent like Cubarsi or Yamal, but he still has a future in Barcelona, in my opinion.
Yeah, Arsen, I didn't know about the story about the different positions he played throughout his youth career, but it makes absolute sense now that I hear it, because when you watch him, you really see this fullback who isn't necessarily reliant on physical attributes. He obviously has physical qualities, but he doesn't necessarily just use blistering speed to run the line up and down and then hope to impress in that way. No, he's very, as Jacek said, he's very complete. Will often invert almost the central channels as well. You mentioned the potential to play as a right center back in the future, but even something like right center mid or kind of in that adaptive Trent Alexander-Arnold role for Liverpool, I would say, even that is I could foresee in his future. So he's someone who has a lot of qualities to work in different tactical constructs, and even let's say beyond Barcelona, I think there's many different roles where he can function in a variety of tactical constructs in the future. But then let's move over to the other side of the pitch for left back. We have Alejandro Balde, as Jacek said, a bit more of a physical fullback. Still very, very technically exceptional, but has a little bit more physical qualities to his game that immediately stand out. He's also a bit older than Fort. He's 21 years old. So whereas Fort was born in 2006, Balde was born in 2003. And he's already playing a really substantial role for the first team this season. I would say amongst the biggest winners from the Hansi Flick appointment. He's played an exceptional role in the Champions League and La Liga. So, Arsen, tell me a little bit about Balde and where you see his Barca career going.
Well, his career actually didn't start with football, but more as athletics, as he was a runner, and that is why like that speed comes from where exactly. But then he made the jump to football, played at left winger, left back in the academy, which is quite often to see fast players play in multiple wing positions as well. And I would say he was regarded as a very big talent even since his youth level. He kind of struggled sometimes for Barca Athletic, but there he developed a lot defensively, which was his weakest point, to be honest. And then when he made the jump to first team with Coman, he didn't do that well, to be honest. And we thought injuries didn't do well for Coman. Well, that's it maybe for him. And then Javi took over, and that was completely different player. Great defensively, great offensively. And now I would say his job is very difficult because now the entire left side is on him. Because Rafinha drifts inside, and he's not a wide winger, which Xavi tried to imply first. And now he tries to maintain the level of being up front, be there defensively. So Barcelona fans ask for perfection from him, and for me, his job is one of the difficult ones on the pitch, I would say. And sometimes he doesn't perform that well, but he had a great few games against Real Madrid as well. I would say he would definitely be the main guy at the left back position for many, many years.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, especially with the Hansi Flick factor here, because Hansi Flick was probably the biggest factor for Alphonso Davies' great career so far. And I think it's a bit simplistic to say, oh, Alejandro Balde, Alphonso Davies, the same player. They're obviously not the same player exactly, but they have similar attributes, and I think they do play similar roles in Hansi Flick's system. I mean, when we look at it was always Alphonso Davies and Benjamin Pavard on the other side. The Jules Koundé Alejandro Balde partnership also has a lot of similarities to that in kind of a more defensive fullback on the right and then kind of that more marauding attacking wing back on the left. So that's a really, really interesting element for me and something that could work well again for Flick in this reign.
And I think it would work well as well with Alejandro Balde on the left and Hector Fort on the right. Problem of Fort is, of course, Jules Koundé being young. So he's like 25 right now, Jules Koundé. So it can be problematic for Hector Fort. But I remember when Alejandro Balde broke through to the first team, and actually people said that he performs better than he performed for Barcelona B. So it was quite special. I think, yeah, of course, defensive skills. I mean, all the attacking fullbacks, all the top attacking fullbacks in world football, they have the same problem. Like, so defensive positioning, 1v1 defensively. And yeah, I think he can get better, but he will never be elite in this aspect. Let's be honest, something for something. And yeah, the final ball, it's a big problem. I hope that we will see many more final balls as the one he provided in the El Clasico.
Arsen, do you maybe care to shed some light on the reasons why you think the adaptation has been so much better in the first team than necessarily in Barca Athletic?
Maybe more because with Garcia Pimienta he had more defensive role and he had a winger sometimes. But to be honest, a miracle because with Javi he was doing everything very well, picking up like 6, 7 assists in that season when he had better players besides him. allowed him more freedom to do what he was best at, which is running in behind or dribbling, using his speed, acceleration, and so on.
And as you said, Arsen, I think even with his weaknesses, I think it's very fair to say that the left side of Barcelona for the next 10 years will belong to Alejandro Balde, and it's pointless to look for another left back.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have the academy like La Masia producing so much talent, why put stones in their path? Let them move freely into those roles when they're ready, and Alejandro Balde is definitely ready. And now moving on to center back, when we talk about ready, I mean, Pau Cubarsi, can you even be more ready as a 17-year-old for first team football? I'd argue as a center back, almost impossible. He's an exceptional talent. He's the third youngest player to debut for Barca in the 21st century, won the Olympics with Spain in the summer as well, and really, really a fine talent who I'd argue could be the greatest La Masia center back since PK. Arsen, where do you stand on that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. Before that, a lot of La Masia enthusiasts were saying that Eric Garcia was the greatest La Masia graduate since PK, but since Pau Cubarsi dropped in, let's say that he has been the most talented, I would say, even both defensively and with the ball. In recent years, La Masia was developing center backs who are very good with the ball, but the problem was the physicality and defensive attributes of the center backs. And in recent years, there's been a change in that regards. That a lot of young players that are coming through now, for example, like Alex Campos, Madu Marcia, Pau Cubarsi, and many more. That's trend of having center backs who only good with the ball is now changing because they're good technically and also defensively. But of course, that problem arose because in the youth academy, Barcelona has like 80-90 possession and barely does any defensive work. So, how can you work on your defensive attributes if you don't do any defensive work during the games? So because most of the times, either the opposition was losing the balls or the midfielders or even forwards were winning the balls. So for center backs, maybe there was like 1-2 situations when they were needed to do actual defending. But now that trend kind of makes making a shift, and there's more defensively suitable center backs in the academy.
Like you say, the fact that you're holding 90% possession in these youth matches is a detriment almost to these center backs. And I think it's another huge argument why you need to bring these players into Barca Athletic early, not just for the possession factor, but also then, learning how to play against a center forward who is just getting long balls the entire match, who's 35 years old, who has 400 matches in the second and third divisions in Spain, and knows how to use his robust physical frame. I think that's something that you won't get in any youth league in general in Western Europe. So I think that's a real benefit of Barca's system. And I know, Jacek, you and I have spoken so often about kind of the dangerous trend towards pure ball playing center backs. I see a lot of these Marc Lenormands in Spanish football who I'm not necessarily against, but I think that it's dangerous to only produce these players who only really are fit for playing alongside a more physically robust center back. And I think Barca have done an excellent job. And I think specifically why Pau Cubarsi has such a high ceiling is the fact that he's not just a ball playing center back. He's a complete center back who can do both phases, and he's just as good in his defensive game as on the ball.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, Kubarsi, of course, there is a lot of room for improvement in the purely defensive aspect. And you can already see people saying, yeah, he's overrated. How can you even say that about a 2007 center back playing for Barcelona? I mean, he will make mistakes. Of course, he will. It's part of the process. But what I wanted to say about Kubarsi is that already at the age of 17, I would rank him among elite rest resistant center backs in world football. Already at the age of 17, it's sensational. And I mean, Kubarsi, if he will keep improving that physical and pure defensive skills, he will be a monster. He will be a monster, and he will be an absolute legend of Barcelona in 10, 15 years.
Moving on then to our second center back, we briefly mention him. Eric Garcia, he's still at Barca. He was on loan at Girona last season. He came through La Masia, then at a very, very young age went to Man City, was a huge talent there, but controversially decided to return to Barcelona in search of more consistent game time. And yeah, that never really panned out. Injuries were a factor, of course, but also I think form was a factor. It's been a weird career for Eric Garcia up to this point. So Arsen, I mean, do you think he has a Barcelona future, or where does Eric Garcia's future really lie?
That's a tough question, because you have still Araujo, Christensen, Pau Cubarsi. Who will Eric Garcia replace? So that's a big question. Maybe Christensen will leave for in order to make Barcelona some money financially. Inigo Martinez will last maybe 1 year or two if Eric Garcia has some patience. He could still stay at Barcelona as a substitute for 1 or 2 years. It will depend if Eric Garcia has that patience to stay, to be on the bench and not play that often when you have Pau Cubarsi playing in front of you, a 17-year-old. Maybe he will go to Girona, which was, I think, was very close in the summer, but didn't happen because of injuries to Christensen or Araujo. So I would say maybe keep tabs in January or in the summer, because maybe he will more likely to leave whenever Christensen recovers or Raul comes back. Even if he will play, that's a big question mark, because but Kubarsi and Inigo Martinez are doing incredible job together as a partnership.
I think Eric Garcia had a really good season for Girona, and in my opinion, he should have stayed in Girona and play in the Champions League with them. But yeah, for Barcelona, it's a really positive thing to have a guy like him who's not complaining, who doesn't play, but who can always jump into the first team and do a good job. People do not like Eric Garcia very much. Barcelona fans because he left Barcelona and fans were outraged. City fans because he didn't really do a great job at City and there were a lot of expectations for him. But I still think Eric Garcia is an above average center back. He can have a really solid career, maybe not in Barcelona, but in a strong club like, let's say, Villarreal or Sevilla, if Sevilla wakes up under Garcia Pimenta, which I hope. So yeah, I think Eric Garcia is a good guy to have in the squad right now for Barcelona.
Yes, and I totally agree, especially with the point about expectations. I think that's a little bit what has hampered Garcia a little bit. He came on so early for City and also earned so much praise from Pep Guardiola that you had this lofty, lofty expectation, especially from English media. And then the fact that he hasn't necessarily gone on that upward trajectory since then is what's really hampered him. But I see him having almost the career like a Mark Bartra, for example, where you know leaving Barcelona, then going to Dortmund, playing Champions League football there, returning Real Betis, solid club in La Liga. I think he'll be an excellent La Liga player, and even for kind of one of these 5 through 8th place La Liga clubs. But I don't necessarily see him having the elite Champions League future like some of these other prospects that we're going to look at today. Let's move on to midfield then, where we have 3 players. We talked about Marc Casado a little bit already, but let's touch on him again just briefly. I think he's been the biggest winner from the Hansi Flick appointment. He's played less than an hour of first team football for FC Barcelona before Flick's appointment. And this season, he's now played every minute in the UCL. He started 2/3 of Barcelona's matches in La Liga. So he's been the big player for Flick. He's been an absolute leader also. He was in Barca Athletic, the captain, but even for Hansi Flick's side already, he's taken over a lot of the captaincy amongst the younger players. He's almost that perfect age where he's obviously a bit older than the likes of Hector Fort and Pau Cubarsi, these really, really young talents, but he's still himself 21 years old, so he's still making those first steps, yet he still has some experience from a few campaigns of Barca Athletic. So, Arsen, I mean, did you foresee Casado playing such a substantial role? And I mean, we said it before that he would likely struggle at some other clubs if he had moved away from Barca, but really then have that long term future at Barca that his performances this season have probably warranted.
Yeah, he started actually this season as a backup option to Marc Bernal, but he picked it up an ACL injury, which will keep him out for the rest of the season. And Marc Casado was there, and of course, Lamasi is there to save the day, I guess. But technically, I really liked Casado, and I hope that he will reach the first team. But I didn't expect that he would explode that much as he did this season. But Marc Casado is definitely a leader in the locker room, even since his young age, even during his under 14, 15, 16, he was also the captain of his team. And there is even an anecdote between the youth coaches that there wasn't a single training session, a single match where after which he approached the coaches to ask what he should improve, what he should work on. He's a hardworking guy, and he mentioned that he worked a lot with Rafa Marquez to improve during his Barca Athletic stage. So I'm very happy that he's enjoying his time in the first team, and I hope to see him explode for many years.
Yeah, I even have a quote from Hansi Flick here. He's so willing to get better and learns all the time. Excellent mentality, a pure La Masia product. I think that sums up exactly what you were saying there. I see almost a little bit of Leon Goretzka in him, specifically, of course, the Leon Goretzka that was under Hansi Flick at Bayern. So he's kind of a perfect blend of the La Masia on-ball quality, but still really this modern ball winner, tenacious, aggressive in duels. I really, really like that he kind of blends La Masia with more modern, almost English style of bots to bots midfielder in this combative nature.
Yes, and I think Marc Casado is not only the revelation at Barcelona level, he's a revelation at European level. I mean, if you would make your 11 of European players right now, of the revelations of the season, Marc Casado would make every single 11. And yeah, as you guys mentioned, Marc Casado is not only this Barcelona DNA, so great on the ball, great vision, extremely intelligent, but he also adds this incredible work rate, incredible amount of kilometers that he needs to make for all these magicians in front of him. So yeah, a great player. I didn't expect at all what's happening around him right now. And actually, before the season, I made these 11 breakout stars. So players with less than 10 games at the senior level that would probably break through this season. And my pick was Marc Bernal, actually. And it's a real shame. I know Casado benefits from it, but it's such a shame that Marc Bernal got injured. He's an unbelievable prospect.
Yeah, I think we should move directly on to Marc Bernal though, because like Jacek said, it's so disappointing that he got injured. In late August, he picked up an ACL injury, which will see him out for the remainder of the year. A bit of a recurring theme, unfortunately, in this Barcelona midfield. And I mean, as Jacek mentioned, as Arsen mentioned as well, such an incredible talent, 17 years old, but already capable of playing at this level and thriving at this level. So, Arsen, talk to me a little bit about Marc Bernal and yeah, your first moments where you realize this could be a future Sergio Busquets for FC Barcelona.
Truthfully, never. Because what I saw is that he wasn't even a defensive midfielder pivot. He was playing as a 10, eight, scoring goals, assisting. But as often happens, which also happened with Nico Gonzalez, who is also was developed from attacking midfielder to a defensive one, because of their growth physically. So he has been playing as a pivot maybe less than 2 years. So he was started as a for under 16s, still playing as an 8 or a 10 sometimes, but he was slowly integrated into that defensive position only when he was 15, 16. So it's only 2 years ago. It's incredible that he made a jump straight from under 16 level to semi pro at Barca Athletic to third division. For the first time, I saw that big of a jump at youth level in the academy. And then next season, he has been called up to preseason with the Hansi Flick, made an impression and stayed with the first team. But again, sadly, ACL injury, and really hope that he recovers well as he's a great kid, humble guy, and just hope he recovers well and comes back to his best.
Yeah, I think I made a report on Bernal like 1.5 years ago or something like that, and I remember receiving messages from people and saying, "Man, why did you put him as a defensive midfielder, like his position, like a deep lying playmaker, pivot?" And I said, "Yeah, because I see him there." And people said, "Yeah, but he's not. He played as a 10, as an 8. What are you on about?" And yeah, it only proves his incredible football IQ. And I think he will benefit also because the things that are different from Busquets is that yeah, he can be dangerous in the final third. Actually, he has a really good ball striking as well, so he can score some great goals. And yeah, I can't wait to see him back on the pitch because he's probably one of my favorite talents of this 2007 generation.
And I think this is also such a factor of La Masia, the fact that you just develop players with such a versatile skill set that you can kind of plug them into any position on the pitch and they'll function effectively. Like you have very few of these specialist players who only can play in this role in this formation. No, these players are so adaptive to different scenarios, to different moments of matches. They can perform so effectively across every position in Barca's formation because it's uniquely Barcelona. Like they know this formation, they know the system from the time that they've grown up in the academy to the time they take the first steps into the first team. So while their teammates might change when they make it up to the first team, how the team plays and how it functions stays the same. And that's just such an advantage when bringing through players.
Yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of calling him as a Sergio Busquets replacement because you cannot replace Busquets. He was one of the kind, and replacing him might be even more tougher than replacing Xavi or Iniesta, because he single-handedly was handling that midfielder in front, like while having Xavi and Iniesta. And Marc Bernal is different to Busquets, but personally, I hope that we move away from that Busquets type replacement, because in the academy we also see less and less single pivots developing, and more double pivots are getting more popular rather than those defensive midfielders who hold themselves alone in that midfield doing all the defensive work.
Yeah, you mentioned that Barca produces these versatile players. I think Busquets wasn't one of them. He could play only one position, but he was a genius at this. He was the El Cerebro. Um, Personally, I would compare Marc Bernal more to Rodri. So let's say a more modern version of Busquets. So someone who also marauds forwards, who can also give something more in the final third. So yeah, my comparison was Rodri, and I still stand by my opinion.
Yeah, yes, and I'll have to counter you there a little bit because I don't know if you're a big MLS fan, but if you watch the MLS now, then you'll actually see that Sergio Busquets is playing center back for Inter Miami at the moment. And we talked about ball playing center backs. I don't think there is any more ball playing center back than Sergio Busquets there. He is a bit the reincarnation of the libero Franz Beckenbauer. I've never seen a player so abject at defending in transitions at center back, but so good at opening the game. So, yes, I'll counter you with Inter Miami. Busquets can play at the center back, but at the prime and in La Liga, maybe not as easily.
Yeah, of course, Adam. With all due respect to the MLS, but I think if Sergio Busquets would play as a center forward in the MLS, he would be the best target man in the whole league. So sorry, MLS fans, but yeah.
With Sergio Busquets, he actually played as a center back in the youth academy, and it was Pep Guardiola who made him a defensive midfielder, that pivot, who broke the world, let's say that. So he knows how to play it, even though he played that a long, long time ago.
Moving on then to our final, I would say, central midfielder. We obviously mentioned, of course, how versatile many of these players are. But Gavi, I mean, we talked about Marc Bernal, who's obviously suffered his ACL injury now. And now we're moving on to a player who's finally recovered from his own. Gavi's only 20 years old, broke out, I would say, in a similar nature to Bernal with fantastic performances early on. A spectacular El Clasico, I can remember. And unfortunately, last season, he missed 330 days and 47 matches for FC Barcelona with that knee injury. He picked it up last November and only returned in the middle of October this year. So I guess the first big question is, how do you think he will return after such a big injury? We've still yet to see him start a match for Barcelona at the time of recording. And yeah, the other factors, of course, what a spectacular player he was before that injury and what made him such a special player under Xavi and Koeman.
Yeah, definitely. Gavi was a special player since his arrival to La Masia, which was like 10 or 12. He arrived from Real Betis, and he was always regarded as a big talent. Also mentioned to be making an appearance in the future for the first team, and his appearance for the first team was thanks to sporting director at the time, Ramon Planes, who invited Gavi, told, okay, Koeman, see this guy, 16-year-old, incredible player, and rest is history.
Yeah, and Arsen, I have a question for you. Do you think that the Gavi that you saw in the academy, it's not the same Gavi that we saw in the first team? I think when I saw Gavi for the first time, he was a genius player, a genius midfielder. I compare him to Thiago Alcantara. Right now, people compare him more to Gennaro Gattuso because he just keeps running, keeps fighting, and I think it's such an intelligent thing to do. When he broke through, he said to himself, "Okay, I'm intelligent, I'm great technically, I have a vision, DNA of Barcelona, but I need something more." Because there were plenty of midfielders that had the same qualities, and actually they didn't make it at Barcelona. And so he added this incredible work rates, aggressiveness, tackling. And honestly, when people check out my report, they say, "Hey man, it's not Gavi that you wrote about." And said, "Yeah, it was Gavi, but it was Gavi in the academy." And for me, he is a different player in the Barcelona's first team. I don't know what are your thoughts, but I would love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely agree because that aggressiveness wasn't always there, and it more became available for him. Let's say that when he was 15, 16, play for under 19. At the time, I remember seeing Copa Campeones semi-final where he was running after the ball, one-on-one defender, and he just bullied the defender out of the ball, even though he was much, much shorter. And that was like when his aggressiveness appeared during his under 19 stage, made his like Barca Athletic debut also with that work rate aggressiveness, and he just took it to the professional level. But before that, under 19, that aggressiveness work rate wasn't there, as you mentioned.
I think he was basing on his technique, vision, passing skills, the DNA of Barcelona. So I think people should check out his compilations, even probably on your YouTube channel, of a younger version of Gavi. And as I said, it was a really different player back then.
Okay, moving then forward to attacking midfield, we have the oldest player on the list, Dani Olmo. He's 26 years old, and he obviously arrived at Barcelona this season, but he came through La Masia and took a pretty unconventional path to the first team. At 16 years old, he moved from Barcelona to Dinamo Zagreb in Croatia, another excellent academy, but not necessarily one that normally recruits from abroad, and especially not from a famed academy like Barcelona. And after a few really successful years at Zagreb, he then moved to RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga. So a very unconventional path to Barcelona's first team, but nevertheless really interesting. And I asked you, Arsen, do you think that more players could take the path that Dani Olmo has done, where they potentially leave La Masia to gain this really high level experience abroad in different environments and academies around the world, and then return to the first team of Barcelona?
Well, you always want the best players to stay in the academy to reach the first team, but if the player sees it difficult, the only option for them is to go abroad somewhere or different location to see other side of footballing world, different style, and maybe in the future you could return to the academy, to Barcelona if you achieve that success, because even though initially Barcelona had the idea, if you leave Barcelona, you're not gonna come back. But it seems that it's a bit different with the academy. If you leave the academy, you have more options to return to first team rather than if you leave the first team and go somewhere else. Then your options to return are much, much lower.
And yes, I mean, specifically for you, you've obviously been following Dani Olmo a little bit longer than I have. I almost only saw Olmo when he burst out in some Champions League fixtures for Zagreb. What was it like seeing that move from Olmo to go to Zagreb so young? I mean, was he someone who wasn't necessarily making it at Barcelona, or was this really a conscious decision from Olmo to prioritize first team minutes when that pathway looked pretty difficult in the first team of Barcelona at that time?
Actually, back then, Olmo was considered as a star of La Masia. He was a star of Spanish youth teams. I remember seeing him for the first time for Spain under 17. So he was considered as a huge hope of La Masia. The choice he made was extremely weird. Like many people were shocked, and it made headlines. But yeah, at the end of the day, Dani Olmo in his career he only made good choices. Going to Dinamo Zagreb, it turned out to be a great choice. Then Leipzig, great choice. Then come back to Barcelona in his prime, great choice. So I really would like to know the advisor of Dani Olmo, but so far his career is exemplary. And honestly, I thought that back then when Dani Olmo moved to Dinamo Zagreb, and after a year he started playing for the first team of Dinamo, he was even the best player of the Croatian league at some point when he was still very young. So I thought that it will start a trend that many more players from Masia or even La Fabrica or other teams will be moving to countries like Croatia, to elite academies like Partizan Belgrade, for example. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And right now, I would say that yeah, top talents at La Masia they have a clear path, so they shouldn't go and look abroad. But I still think that it could be an interesting option for all these second tier talents. For example, young Virgili, for example, it could be an interesting option for him as it's doubtful that he will make it in the first team. But yeah, I thought that it will be happening much, much more often after Dani's almost success.
Yeah, I mean, I can really only applaud Olmo for the decisions he's made. I mean, the fact that he went as a 16-year-old to Zagreb in Croatia, I mean, you need balls to do that. You need a lot of faith almost in your own ability and confidence in the fact that you'll make it at the highest level to make that move. Because if it doesn't work out, then it's very hard to even come back from that in the first place. So the fact that he made that move and it's all worked out in the moves he's made since then goes to show what a phenomenal talent he is. And like Jacek said, a move that many players should consider. Maybe not from Barca because that pathway is unclawed at the moment. But if you go inwards to Spain to their biggest rivals, Real Madrid, I think a lot of academy talents could profit from smart decisions like that.
I think why more people didn't leave La Masia to go abroad is because at the time the sporting director Erika Bedal basically made financial offers to the players like Moriba, who became like one of the most paid academy players. He was receiving a contract of 1 million euros at the time, per year, and that was outrageous at the time. And that's why the academy was able to keep those most prominent players since then, because they didn't want to repeat players leaving. And one way to cope with that was the financial power of the academy before the financial situation got much worse, which basically led now in recent years a bit more players leaving. For example, Adam Asno, who was massive left back talent, one of my favorite ones, as well. He would be happy to stay at Barcelona at the time, but he looked after his parents as well. So when Bayern appeared with a great financial offer for him, which was also lucrative for his parents, who didn't come with a wealthy background, let's say. So he left for Bayern for that also financial reason. And you cannot blame the guy for caring for his parents and so on. But I would say it was the biggest loss to academy in recent years, which I was very sad, to be honest, and heartbroken at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Asnu, a fantastic talent who I hope many of you heard about in our Morocco episode. If you want to hear more about Asnu, just go to the channel and click on the Morocco episode, or we even have a dedicated clip to the segment where we spoke about Asnu with Vlad from Lions Talk. Moving on, though, with our Barcelona segment here, the other attacking midfielder I would say in the squad, who's another one of these players who's extremely versatile across midfield positions, Fermin Lopez, 21 years old. He's a Euro and Olympics winner. So alongside Alex Baena, the only player from that Spain squad to play in both competitions. And I would say specifically the Olympics was his tournament. He, of course, won the gold medal, won the MVP award, and scored 6 goals in the process. So I think you really cannot have a better Olympics than that. The Michael Phelps of soccer in last season's competition. Where do you really see his long-term future being at Barca? But also even more interesting maybe is his long-term position.
Yeah, definitely, because at youth stage he was playing as a false nine, left winger, midfielder. With him, he was so sure that it was crazy to even imagine him reaching the first team. But of course, while he was one of the shortest players, the club still believed in him. And if you look on the internet on his picture on his contract renewal day, you will see that he looks like 12 when he was supposed to be 16. So but technically he was also great, and that still is with him. Like, that playing style that he has now at the professional level is still visible from his youth stage. And when he left for loan, he developed a lot physically, and that helped him a lot. At Lenges, he also picked up like 14, 16 goals or so on, and he had a great season. He's still thankful to Lenges. He became a fan favorite for Lenges fans, and when he came back, he showcased to Javi that he has future in the first team, and it was great to see, because it's always hard to see in today's football that those short, weak players can have a future in football, but La Masia doesn't care about the height. And with Fermin, it's hard to say, because you also have Dani Olmo, who can play behind the striker as a 10, while Fermin also can play as a behind the striker, or as a maybe sometimes a inside left winger, inside forward. So it's hard to say what his future will be, but as a rotational player, as a backup to Rafinha or Olmo or someone, he can be a very good utility player.
Definitely, and I think Fermin Lopez's main strengths are his positioning, movement, football IQ, really good finishing skills. You know what? He reminds me of these Ajax products like Davy Klaassen or Donny van den Beek, but the Spanish version. So a much better version of Donny van den Beek, for example. He's not a guy who will make these dribbles, who will make Rabonas. He's extremely efficient. He has these shades of a Raumdeuter, as you say in Germany. So a bit of Thomas Müller, not a guy that young fans will like, because yeah, he doesn't dribble, he doesn't do tricks, but yeah, his efficiency is incredible. So an extremely useful guy to have in your squad. And as I said, he will never be considered as a big star of this Barcelona team, but it's great to have him. And yeah, at the Olympics, he was amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's a player who you can put him next to any striker or any midfield behind him, and he'll find ways to adapt to the qualities of what's needed in those specific scenarios. Like you said, I really like the Donny van de Beek comparison. I also agree he's much more complete and has a much better ceiling than Van de Beek, but I just looked at a lot of the goals that Van de Beek scored throughout that Ajax run to the Champions League semifinals, when he's making those ghosting runs behind lines, or he's just naturally somehow at the right place to capitalize on rebounds. And Fermin Lopez has a lot of that to his game as well, which is so important in modern football because end of the day, it is a numbers game. It is a game about who scores more goals, and Fermin Lopez just has a tendency to be there in the right moments when it really matters.
Exactly. Football is not figure ice skating. And as I said, Fermin is not the most spectacular guy on the pitch. And he won't have 90 passes with 97% of accuracy, but he's still an extremely intelligent and useful player on the pitch.
Yeah, but moving on then to someone who I would say is spectacular and is efficient at the same time. It was bound to come up, Lamine Yamal. I mean, an absolute phenom. We have a little bit of a background section here just for me to kind of introduce the players, but for Lamine Yamal, I will just say if you know of a record, he was probably the youngest player and broke it. And if you know of a competition, he's probably already won it. I mean, the kid is 17 years old, yet already has the CV of a 35-year-old veteran who's probably won 4 Ballon d'Ors. So we said it in the intro, he's completely changed how talent is even perceived. Arsen, I mean, talk to me about Lamine Yamal. Your first moments watching him. When did you realize this would truly be a generational La Masia product?
I made a Twitter post about it like many years ago saying that Lamine Yamal has potential to be the best through and through academy player because he has been scouted when he was still 5. He had a pre-agreement to join the academy when he was 5. So yeah, but you could only join the academy when he was 7. So he spent his entire life in the academy in La Masia. And whenever people saw him, they already knew exactly straight away that he is generational talent since his early ages. He was always playing with a category above his own. And when Lamine was 15 years old, he was playing with under 19. And honestly, it took him a few months to adapt to that level, but afterwards, everything went for him. He was creating, he was scoring, he was the main guy on that team when he was still 15. So it was crazy with how much confidence he was playing. He still has that flair and confidence in the first team playing against top defenders, and it's honestly amazing.
I think the first time that someone wrote me about Lamine when he was 13, and I said to myself, okay, it's probably one more dribbler, trickster guy who dribbles and he doesn't know what to do afterwards. And then I watched him and I said, Jesus, this guy is not only a dribbler, he's so extremely intelligent. He's a perfect mix of a creator and dribbler. And I remember I made a report on him when he was still 14. And there is one rule on Football Talent Scout that the player needs to be 15 to be on the website. I broke that rule for Max Doman recently, but I remember the report on Lamine Yamal was ready when he was 14, and I needed to wait like 7 months until his 15th birthday, and I published it on his 15th birthday. I think if we will continue to speak about Lamine Yamal, we will stay here for a few days. As I said, he absolutely changed the perception of people about young talents. I really feel sorry for every talent in world football right now because every time he will be compared to Lamine Yamal, and every time he will look really weak when you compare him to Lamine Yamal, because Lamine Yamal is an anomaly. He's a phenomenon. He's incredible. Actually, I don't really want to compare him with Messi. Like, I know that for Barcelona fans, Messi no se toca. But honestly, Lamine Yamal is having a better breakthrough than Messi, in my opinion. And it's not to say, yeah, he's better than Messi and he will be better than Messi. But in my opinion, his breakthrough is better than Messi's, which of course doesn't mean that he will be a GOAT like Messi. He will probably a GOAT, but not better than Messi.
Yeah, the those comparisons of Lionel Messi with academy players, it's always tough because before it was Elias Akomach, who was called the next Leo Messi by Patrick Kluivert, so that was put a lot of pressure on him. And then Lamine came and everyone was calling him the next Messi, and it's kind of repetitive thing in the La Masia, but definitely, you never want to compare someone to Leo Messi, because it's almost impossible to reach the level of Lionel Messi or Ronaldo, because if you want to reach their levels, you have to be scoring 50 goals, 40 goals just to meet them stat-wise, and that's incredible, to be honest. And we have to see how it goes with Lamine. If he stays fit, we definitely have one of the best players for the next 10, 15 years to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, they always say comparison is the thief of joy. And for me, I would say it's difficult for Lamine Yamal to record numbers on a parallel to Messi at his prime because, I mean, what Messi put up in numbers wise in his best seasons is just simply exceptional. But I would say that what Lamine Yamal can do with the ball and how graceful and elegant he is on the field, there's only one comparison to him, and that is Lionel Messi. I think no other player could have that beauty that he executed on the football pitch, but also beauty in a very streamlined and goal-centric manner. Nobody else did that as well as Leo.
Yeah, and we hear many opinions that Lamine Yamal won't be an elite goal scorer. Come on, like he broke all the limits, Lamine Yamal. So why won't he become an elite goal scorer? I mean, in El Clasico, he scored a goal with his weaker right foot. In my report, actually, one of his weaknesses was right foot, weaker foot. Now he scores a goal against Real Madrid in Bernabeu with his right weaker foot. So there are no limits for him, and people that say he will never be an elite goal scorer, just don't listen to them. They are fake prophets.
And we obviously spoke about all of the former La Masia graduates compared to Leo Messi, but I would say one of the biggest ones in recent years has been our final player here, Ansu Fati. A very, very interesting storyline here. He's still only 22 years old, but someone who's absolutely been riddled by injuries. Missed 622 days of football through injury since the start of the 2020-2021 season. In fact, in the past 3 years, Ansu Fati has played just 2 competitive fixtures over 90 minutes. So just a player who's been absolutely struck down by the injury gods. I mean, he broke through in similar manner to Lamine Yamal. In fact, one of the few records that Yamal doesn't have is the youngest scorer in the UEFA Champions League, and that is Ansu Fati with 17 years and 1 month. A brilliant winner against Inter Milan away in the San Siro in the Champions League. So, Arsen, do you think Ansu Fati has a future still at Barca?
Well, it's a tough one because, he was very big talent in the academy. Crazy how he was scoring goals with incredible confidence. And he was also making preseason with Barca Athletic while he was still 16. And then it was Ernesto Valverde who called him up due to many injuries in the first team. And at 16, he was the next thing. It was something that gave Barcelona fans excitement. And but sadly, that injuries, the meniscus, and I think he's mentally been broken because of all those injuries. The injuries are one of the worst things in football that can happen to the player. The amount of stress, the amount of thoughts that goes through your head is saddening, to be honest. And my worry with him is that mentally he's not there. He's scared to play to best of his ability, because if you look at his stats, like goals and assists, compared to his numbers, they're still great. But honestly, it's hard to see him come back to his best.
As we spoke about Lamine Yamal, that there are these fake prophets and clairvoyants saying that he will not be an elite goal scorer. For some reason, they say that. And I think when Ansu Fati broke through, like there were shades of him being a really good goal scorer, really good shooting technique. So maybe not such a creative dribbler as Lamine, but extremely efficient wing player, inside forward. It's such a shame for these injuries. Okay, right now people say that, he was overrated. No, he wasn't. He's just extremely unlucky with injuries. Let's be honest, and I really hope that he'll bounce back. I don't really see it happening in Barcelona, but maybe somewhere else. In Brighton, as you said, he had some really promising moments. So I still have my stocks in Ansu Fati.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, especially just that Brighton move didn't work out. Just that was a loan where it actually looked so promising, right? It was a perfect destination for him to almost rebuild his career a little bit. A good management there. They give opportunities to young players, so I had a lot of promise in that. But the fact that that didn't work, and the fact that Ansu Fati is just so injury prone, means that clubs are gonna think twice before loaning him out again. Because the last thing you want from a loan player is an injury prone loan player, right? I mean, why would you ever want to sign that? And that's kind of the issue where he's stuck in. He has a long term contract in Barca, and even though Barca maybe would be okay with loaning him out again, no club will want him for the fact that it's unlikely that he'll be fit for 50% of the season. And there's just no benefit to having a loan player under those situations.
I still think that some Spanish clubs, such as Sevilla or Villarreal, would take him straight away. And yeah, but as you said, these injuries, it's really a huge problem. People say it was because of he was playing too much during his youth. I don't think so. It just he's unlucky. Like some people have bodies to play football, and some just not. For example, Ronaldo phenomenon, so probably one of the biggest talents I have ever seen. He didn't have knees to play football, so he was just unlucky. And yeah, Ansu Fati, such a shame because he was a brilliant talent. I gave him 10 out of 10. I'm gonna be honest. He won't fulfill that potential, sadly.
We spoke about it in the Chelsea episode we did a few weeks ago, and it comes up here again. I think in pretty much every one of our club episodes, the injury factor will always have a big role to play in who succeeds and who doesn't. And unfortunately, it's hard to predict. On the one hand, you have a player like Ansu Fati who comes through and has countless injuries, and then you have another player like Thomas Müller, for example, who can go 15 years without ever getting an injury. It's just a little bit the flip of the coin. Anyway, so that wraps up the first half of our segment. We'll be back in part two to profile some of the academy talents who have still yet to make their first team debut and could be amongst the next crop rising through La Masia. And welcome back. In the first half of the show, we gave a nice overview of La Masia, its current crop of first-team graduates, and some of the defining features that have made the academy such a global success. And in the second half, we go deep into the current academy setup, looking at some of the talents who are yet to make their first-team debut, but definitely have the quality to do so in the near future. Me and Jacek have selected 6 players, and we have Arsen here to talk us through them, to give a little bit of insight into their qualities and where their future could lie. Starting with the oldest on our list, 19-year-old Dani Rodriguez. He's born in 2005, so some would say even too old for FC Barcelona's first team at the moment, but he's a remarkable talent. Someone who really stole my eye at the U19 Euros. Probably, in my opinion, Spain's most exciting player of the tournament. And in the UEFA Youth League, he's also had a just fantastic career. He's 5 goals and 4 assists in 12 matches. Last season alone, 4 goals and 3 assists in 7 matches. So on the biggest occasions in youth football, he's always there. Unfortunately, he's been out all season with an injury, a muscular injury that's just really taken a long time to heal. But when on the pitch, he's a really superb talent who can bring a lot to the table. So, Arsen, tell me a little bit about why this was a player we needed to have on this list.
So I would say he was like very big talent since his arrival from Real Sociedad Academy. He impressed a lot of fans in his first season. Like his link up with Iker Bravo was incredible in that cadet A team, which was under 16. From then, he was a bit unlucky with injuries, but he still managed to showcase his talent, his incredible ball control, dribbling ability, and in general creativity. He was also like seen as a best player, but maybe not not picking up the most assists or most goals. But his influence was still visible on the pitch with the way he played. This season, he kind of picked up a muscular injury, but he's expected to be back this month. I was told that at the beginning of this month, but it will also depend on his feelings, how it goes. It will be interesting to see where he will play, as some other players will return from injury for Barca Athletic. So it will be a good reinforcement for Albert Sanchez as well.
I think if you love football, if you love these exciting talents, these dribblers, you will love Dani Rodriguez. A few years ago, I gave him a maximum potential. At this point, I don't really believe he will fulfill that, so he won't become a world class player. But yeah, I'm still a romantic guy, and I still love him a lot. I hope to see him back very soon on the pitch, and still he's among my favorite players to watch. From the entertainment perspective, he's your guy. He will probably leave Barcelona, but yeah, I think and I hope that he will follow the pathway of Ilias Akomar, for example. So going to a good club like Villarreal and work for his name there.
Yeah, like I said in the brief intro, I mean, Dani Rodriguez is a player who was for me the most exciting element in the U19 Euros. He was kind of the reason why I wanted to tune in for every single Spain game. His tight space manipulation, his freedom in 1v1 duels, the way that he just carefree goes beyond an opponent both on the outside and the inside, and the fact that he can also pair all that with really good incisive passing. I mean, yes, of course, he's not necessarily someone who's from the wings going to score 15, 20 goals a season, but as a real creative element with a true goal scorer alongside him, I think he can be someone who can bring you a lot. I see almost a bit of Phil Foden in him, someone who can drift carelessly into those central channels, but can also play on the wings. Someone who can create for others, but also carry the ball forward with really penetrating dribblings. So I do still see a big future for him, but you do need to put him into the right system. He is very, very diminutive. He's very, very much this Barca type of player. And I think that he could struggle in different systems around the world, but I do hope there is a place in elite football for Dani Rodriguez. And I think there will be. Okay, moving on then to the second player in our selection. We're moving down a few age groups already to a 2008 born center forward, Oscar Gistau. It's been a really exceptional youth league campaign for him so far. He has 3 goals in 2 games, including a brace and a 3-1 victory over FC Bayern. He's also already made his Barca Athletic debut. As I said, only 16 years old. A very, very interesting player. So, Arsen, talk me through why this guy is on our list.
He's a typical number 9, I would say, which is in recent years has become more a trendy thing with Margir, now with Oscar Gustavo. But I would say he's even above Margir by a lot, to be honest. And even youth academy coaches were joking that if he will stay at the club, he would make a lot of money for the club. Because since his arrival, he was also always crazy about scoring goals. And it shows that he has been always top scorer for his teams, be it under 15, under 14, or under 16. And then when he was 15, he was promoted to under 19. But at the same time, he was playing for both under 18 and under 19 team and scoring goals. I think he picked up for both teams combined like 10 goals. So he kind of followed that Margu's roadmap, playing for both under 18 and under 19 team. But he has been doing that while being 1 year younger than Marguin at the time. And his playing style can be compared to that of Harry Kane more like, and also he's that scoring number 9 that finishes his chances quite often.
I really like this new trend of Barcelona number nines, because if there were some weak points in La Masia in the last decade, let's say, yeah, people would mainly say, yeah, number 9. And in recent years, very recent years, we had already Victor Barbera, we had Marc Guille, and now we have Oscar Gistau. So probably a guy with the highest potential out of the three, even though I rate both Guille and Barbera quite high. So yeah, really excited, and I'm really happy that Barcelona adapted. Like they said, okay, we need more number nines, more typical goal scorers, not only dribblers and creative midfielders. And yeah, it pays out. So we had already 3 players. So Barbera was born in 2004, Guille 2006, and Gistau 2008. So every 2 years there is maybe not elite, but a top prospect at this number 9 position. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the trend, and I hope it will continue in the coming years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we shouldn't, of course, discount his also exceptional hold up play, his link up player. I mean, you still see that he has a lot of qualities in bringing other teammates into play with his back to goal, using kind of soft flicks and around the corner passes to distribute play into wide zones. So he still has all of that, which you've seen with so many of these false nine Barca forwards of the past. But he is still that pure goal scorer. You see that he is a player who, when he goes 90 minutes without a goal, he's frustrated regardless of how many assists he has. He has that killer mentality that you want in a center forward. And as Jacek rightfully said, I think Barca have adapted to the modern demands as well, where you do need this player up top, like a Robert Lewandowski in the first team, who will put the ball away when you then create those countless chances for him to profit off of. We're staying then with the 2008 age group, potentially even the golden age in the La Masia Academy. I don't know, Arsen, if you would go along with that or pick a different age group perhaps. But sticking with the 2008s, we have 2 cousins, starting with Guille Fernandez. He's a central midfielder. He joined Barca from Espanyol in 2018. Already been on the bench in La Liga and the Champions League, but at the time of recording has not made his first team debut. But I can tell you, by the time we record this and edit it, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a performance for the first team. He's very, very close to getting involved, and the talent that he has makes that justified because he is a top player to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. Guille is a big talent as a midfielder, maybe since Gavi. And Gille's physique helped him quite a bit in his youth stage, as he was always taller than his opponents. And since then, he has been promoted above his own category in order to be able to adapt to face more physically prepared players, but he was still doing very well, scoring goals, assisting, being the main guy from that midfield for his youth teams. He's an interesting player because he's not your typical La Masia midfielder, I would say, who is like known for technique, passing, creativity, and so on. But he is also like, I would say, Jude Bellingham wise player. And this season he has been promoted straight to Barca Athletic, and it can be seen that he's a bit struggling, maybe physically, because he used to using that his physique to his advantage, and when you make that jump to professional football, it can lose that fact. So he's still adapting to that, finding his way to playing at that professional level. But he's getting better with every minute, and the fact that he was called up for La Liga, it showed that Hansi Flick has been impressed by him, and maybe in the future we could see him as a prominent player in the first team.
And I fully agree with Jude Bellingham comparison. I think the differences are he's basically a Jude Bellingham with this La Masia and Spanish touch. So he carries the ball slightly more than Bellingham. He likes to have the ball at his feet more than Jude Bellingham. But yeah, it's a really good comparison. I think that Guille Fernandez is considered as the next big thing after Lamine Yamal, and there are a lot of expectations. And of course his cousin Toni Fernandez, which we will talk about in a few minutes. But I would like to ask you a question, Arsen. I am not an insider like you of La Masia, but I read a lot and I watch a lot. And would you say that Toni Fernandez had a better year than Guille Fernandez? Because that's the popular opinion right now. I'm a big fan of both. But do you think that the past year Toni was better than Guille?
Let's say last season, I think Tony had a much better season because he was constantly playing with Juvenil B, which is under 18, and he was scoring goals, assisting. While for Gillett was he first started with Juvenil A, which is under 19, but he struggled in the first months, and that is why the coaches decided to bring him down to Juvenil B, to under 18. And since then, he had a much better season since then, as he was able to adapt to much level category. But in general, I would say Toni was better last season. And also this season, he was also incredible for the first team during preseason. He also scored a few important and crazy goals for Barca Athletic on his debut. Also, Guille scored together with Toni, which is also a very common thing that they do in the academy and for Spain, because remember that the day Toni became the youngest player to score for Spain under 16, I think it was. Guille also scored the same day against Malta, it was, and then they also scored the first goals for Barca Athletic on the same day as well. So it's like whenever one scores, the other one does as well. So it's a very funny thing if you look at it a bit closer. So yeah.
And one more funny thing that I would like to add is that Toni and Guille, so their fathers are brothers and their mothers are sisters. So it's the closest cousin that you can get. They're almost half brothers. So it's incredible, not even in football, but in life in general.
We talk about Barca DNA, but I don't want to really go too far into the Fernandez DNA, because I think there'll be some odd alignments in there if we continue the trend of brother with brother and sister with sister. But we've naturally moved on to Toni Fernandez, and I think the one thing that I find really interesting about him is the fact that for me, he's played a lot of different positions, but I see him still purely as this shadow striker hanging behind the center forward. I've watched him on the wings also for Barca Athletic, and I've watched him also as a shadow striker, like I said. And for me, I see him truly as this Antoine Griezmann almost. I think, okay, maybe Antoine Griezmann isn't the best comparison for Barca fans, but the Atletico Antoine Griezmann in the shadow striker role is a superb player. And that's where I see Toni Fernandez playing his best football. But I don't necessarily see him being as versatile and adaptable as a Guille Fernandez, for example. So I would maybe end it by saying that Toni Fernandez maybe has the highest peak of the pair, but Guille would maybe be more adaptable to different systems and different style of footballs because he brings more different elements to the table, which I think also makes sense when we say Guille Fernandez is the Jude Bellingham type player. I mean, Jude can also play pretty much every role he's asked.
You know, with Toni is a funny thing is that he started as a midfielder initially in his very early stages, and then he was developed into that false nine, scoring incredible amount of goals. I think he scored like 30 goals, also picking up 10 assists in 27 games for under, which was it, 15, I think. And it's usually very rare to see that amount of goals scored in La Masia for Football 11 side. With him, he can play as a 10, as a right winger, as a striker, or as a midfielder. He's capable of playing in those positions, but the problem is with him is difficult to see where his constant position will be, because he has played in a lot of positions, but for Barca Athletic, I saw him play mostly as a right winger, and I think it might be suitable more for him, because a striker, he lacks a bit of that physicality to be in front of defenders, but his scoring ability is top notch. And you know, as you mentioned, Griezmann comparison is a good one. While also his coaches compared to him to having that Pedri touch, you know. So it depends where he plays, but for me, it's hard to see his constant position. That is my main worry with him, but he's definitely a top talent.
As we said an hour ago, that money can be a problem in football. I think versatility can be also a problem. Of course, it's great to be versatile, but it can be a curse as well. Because I also see Toni exclusively as a second striker right now. So a beautiful player to watch. I also agree. I compared him on FTS to Antoine Griezmann. I would say Antoine Griezmann from his second, third season, because Griezmann had this roles on the pitch. Right now, he's a central midfielder, basically. So yeah, I see Toni there, and as we mentioned, Dani Rodriguez, that he's a fantastic player to watch. Toni Fernandez is also a fantastic player to watch, a player who was born to play in limited spaces. So like Guille is not a joy to watch. Let's say he's more of a efficient guy. So not a typical Masia product, as we mentioned, but yeah, I'm a fan of Toni, and I will always be cheering for players like him. So players that actually gives you this joy of watching football. So I gave him 9 out of 10 potential, for Guye 10 out of 10, and I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I would say also with Tony, I mean, he's an absolutely exceptional player in tight spaces, but he isn't necessarily that diminutive, right? I mean, Dani Rodriguez is what, maybe 166, and Tony is 184 or 182 at least. So he's quite a tall player actually to be operating so efficiently in these tight rooms. And I watched 3 matches of Tony Fernandez, and one of them was on a turf pitch. And there you really see kind of the futsal qualities that he has. So much kind of sharp turns and body shifts with the sole of his foot on the ball. A lot of these V cuts, these Zidane-esque kind of movements on the ball. So yeah, I think what Jacek's saying there is really, really adamant in his game.
And I really think they both are always the best on the pitch when they play futsal. Incredible close control, incredible technique. So Toni and Guye Fernandez would surely make my futsal team if I would make one.
Yeah, I think quite a few of the Barcelona talents would, to be honest. Let's move on then a few age groups down. We're going from the 2008s to the 2009s here. Baba Karuma, many will not have heard of him. I'll open it up here. Me and Jacek hadn't even heard of him before this show, so Arsen brought him to us. The one thing people may know about him, though, is the fact that he's the brother of Ilaix Mariba, another fascinating talent from Barca in, I would say, the weirdest era of Barca, where young talents came through for weird reasons, then didn't make it, and there was constant change. So yeah, a very, very odd era to come through for him. But his brother Baba Karuma is a big, big talent. Only 15 years old, a top center back. So Arsen, tell us a little bit about this player.
So Baba is not only a center back, but he's also a very versatile player because I saw him play as a pivot, as a 8, 10 right winger. So he has been playing everywhere, to be honest, where possible. So it's like, but now he's mostly playing as a pivot more often. So he is being adapted there because his ball ability is top notch. He has been developed there more. Besides that, I would say he's very great defensively, has great physique, gets aerial duels, and even some La Masia enthusiasts mentioned that he's even bigger talent than he likes Moriba, so his brother. So it will be interesting to follow his career, and I'm just mention him because he's definitely a player to keep an eye in the future because this season he was promoted straight to under 18 side while he still is 15. It will be an interesting career for him and for us to follow.
Yeah, it'll be cool to repost this clip when he inevitably makes his first team debut, hopefully in the future. But Jacek, I mean, like I said, you obviously hadn't even heard of Kuruma before this recording, but yeah, it's Mariba you've obviously heard of. And what were kind of your thoughts on Mariba when he broke through, and also where his career has landed now?
Yeah, of course, I'm disappointed with his career so far. He's still young. He's still only 21. But yeah, in my opinion, football deserves a Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba, who didn't finish his career at the age of 25, and I saw shades of Paul Pogba in Ilaix Moriba. Yeah, as I said, I think we deserve to have a prime Paul Pogba, and I thought he would be one of these players. And I still think there is one more player in Barcelona that we will speak about in a while that reminds me of Paul Pogba a little bit. But yeah, Ilaix, as I said, extremely disappointing, but I still have hope. He's still very young, so I hope for the best.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic transition. I think you're getting used to podcasting here because we'll move on to our Paul Pogba comparison now. I have my player model as Yaya Toure, but I think that's quite similar at least to a prime Paul Pogba. Ebrima Tunkara, he's the player who's we're talking about here. Only 14 years old. He's born in Lamoy, Gambia, but plays for the Spanish U15 national team and is really a superb central midfielder. Brings so much already. He's a leading star in the Barca youth age groups, and I would say perhaps the biggest 2010 and younger talent in Spanish football right now.
Yeah, Brima, what I know about him is that ever since saw him, which was, I think he was 11 at the time, and at the time he was playing for under 12, even though he was supposed to playing for under 11. So, and since then, he has been always playing with players older than him. And only the reason why he's still not playing for under 19 or under 18 is because he's not eligible to do so. Because in Spain, for you to play in those divisions, you have to be at least 15. And he's 14, so, and he's not eligible to play. Otherwise, he would definitely be playing in that category because he is definitely the next big thing, I would say, after Lamine. And yeah, I wouldn't compare him to Yaya Toure because for me, I see a bit of Mohamed Kudus more like rather than Yaya Toure, to be honest. But he's like that 10 that can play on the wing, so it will be interesting to see how he develops because even at 14 he has been playing for Spain under 15, which is also a rarity to see.
As Adam said, Yaya Toure, I still see a more attacking player in him. So Paul Pogba, I think it would be a good comparison. I really like the Mohamed Kudus one as well, because yeah, Kudus, he's an attacking midfielder. He can play on both wings. He can also play deeper in midfield. So it's a really great comparison. I remember watching Ebrima for the first time. I saw one of these compilations because someone recommended him to me. Was playing on the wing and he was great. He was excellent. And I said to myself, wow, what a winger. What a great prospect, a wing prospect. And then after a few minutes of research, I saw that he's not a primary winger. So he's a midfielder. So I was impressed even more. So yeah, of course, top potential. And as you said, Arsen, I see him like this pathway. So Guille Fernandez, and after that, it's a Brima. Crazy potential. Of course, there are some physical advantages, but I wouldn't limit him at all just to physical prowess. He's so much more than that.
I totally agree with both of you. I think that he's a superb talent who like we said can play in so many different positions, and it'll be interesting to see where his career takes him. I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that he's 14 years old, so he could be playing at center back or he could be playing at attacking midfield in 6 years' time. There's still so much room for development. I will say it's very important that he plays a few years up because physically he's just so much further mature than any other player his age. Even if he takes a bad touch or turns without scanning, he can always use his physical qualities to get him out of tricky situations. Versus when he plays up, I think you'll see that he doesn't necessarily have that way to wriggle out of scenarios and will need to be even cleaner and even quicker on the ball, which is what will make him kind of take those steps even faster. But a superb player and one of many which I think we've highlighted in this show to watch. So, Arsen, that rounds up today's show. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. I can say that I learned a lot about Barcelona today and talked through some of my own ideas about these players with you. So it was just a great pleasure to have you on. Where can people find you for more exciting insight about La Masia and Barcelona in general?
So you can find me on Twitter, also known as X, as ArsenKveFCB. Using the same link, you can follow me on YouTube where I make the compilations for the players. You can find different age categories from under 14, under 15, under 16, under 18, under 19, and usually make for all players for entire squad. So, and also on Instagram as ArsenKveFCB.